Hi, and welcome to another incredibly sporadic episode of Killing Canaries, the Creative Minds podcast that is and may never be again. I'm sitting here with Steve Drew, who's the founder and brilliant mind behind Our Fantasy, the subreddit dedicated to fantasy and works of fantastical literature, speculative fiction, that is growing at an incredible rate and is probably the only place on Reddit that I actually feel safe as a person hanging out and just interacting with other Redditors. And so I wanted to sit down and talk with him today a little bit about creating and molding and moving forward with an online community that's going to be sustainable, healthy, and enjoyable. And it's a conversation that keeps coming up just because of who you are and what you're doing. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about how you came around to founding the community?
Yeah, my background is in the business world, and specifically in areas of mergers and acquisitions. So corporate development, how do you buy companies, how do you value companies, how do you integrate companies in, and a good portion of that is the study or the understanding of where you create value. People call it synergies, which is a strange word, but in most terms it usually means you fire people after you buy their company. Yeah. But the reality is how do you integrate their culture into yours in such a way you can create value. So that study over the years ended up with me working, heading up Earthlink, the internet companies, some of their M&A efforts, integration of companies and things along those lines. A lot of conversation with people that represented startups like Y Combinator, and within Y Combinator, among the many startups they had was Reddit at the time. So in looking at whether or not we should go forward to purchasing or going up against Condé Nast in the bid for Reddit, that was an evaluation of how things are going. And that was honestly the formation of Reddit Fantasy. Because as a lifelong reader of that genre, and speculative fiction, that might as well go ahead and test it out. And
Absolutely. So you started Our Fantasy almost as a form of research.
It really was a form of research, and quite frankly, there are a lot of companies around at that time that were very much like Reddit. And I don't remember all of the names. You got Diggs that survived and Crash, and others along those. That the social media and the survival of the different communities, it was random. It was like the beginning of the auto manufacturing. You don't know who's going to survive, and that was part of the bets.
Yeah. Well, and I forgot to mention that we're actually at ConFusion right now, and we just got done with a panel Steve just got done moderating a panel that he moderated well because he's good at moderating. It turns out that talked about this a little bit and how I think toxic was a good word that came up. That in any online community, in any interaction, you end up with toxic people, and Reddit is notorious, has a reputation for having lots of toxicity, which I think speaks highly to the fact that you've carved out an area within this ecosystem that's actually safe. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Reddit itself is, the way you start a community in Reddit is you cry shotgun. Yeah. So shotgun, I have books, or I have sports, or I have whatever it may be. And as you like the internet itself, the naming nomenclature it's all taken, within the thousands of communities. And we talked a little bit about this earlier. That does not mean that because you're good at being fast and claiming something, doesn't mean you're good at creating a community. So what we have is a collection of communities where the average is policing. My role as a moderator is to police. And what it does is it creates those who, in positions for those who are good at policing, good at coding so that certain words trigger things, good at setting things up so that you don't create a community. You just basically moderate the toxicity the best you can and do it. Other groups are just there for their own purpose. There might be the flower pressing group, which there is, and it's probably a very lovely group because the people that navigate towards that
press flowers.
And there are some of the nastiest things on the internet where people collect and do it. The whole overarching area within there and the brand is Reddit. So there's no question. Reddit's earned what it's earned in that environment. If the average is policing and it's a bit of a free-for-all, then so be it. For me, I just allowed to do that. We talked a bit about fantasy. I learned about certain authors for years. Just let it develop to maybe about 6,000 people, just organically. And a friend of mine who is in his 60s said, "You know what you have in front of you?" And he said, "These authors I'm seeing, get 50 people at a signing and they love it." And I said, "I have 6,000." He says, "Well, is there something you can do with that?" I said, "I think I can." and went through my books at that time, and I would look up and I'd say, I like this author. Okay, he's dead. Okay, so
can't reach out to
the
him.
rediscovery of who are authors, and then I hit. I'd never read his books. Brandon Sanderson was active on Reddit at the time, so I reached out to him and I said, look, would you be interested in doing an AMA? We've never done one in Reddit fans. And he says, I'd like to do that, and here's how I'd like to do it. And we developed a process. One of the most successful AMAs around that genre, 3-4 years ago. It was so successful that I'm like, that was a good test. Let's see who else I can do. Robin Hahn reached out to Megan Lindholm, the author, and said, would you be interested? She said, absolutely, but I'm of a generation that doesn't, I don't know how to do this. How are we going to do it? So I had to write the script with her of how to go through a process. And it was a script that developed for future people. But it also helps set the tone. You have leadership from a steady hand and a person that gets it, Brandon Sanderson, of how to do it right. Then you have the process of discovery, which both Rob and Ham and I love doing together, of how are we going to make this work? We rewrote how to do an AMA so that it was lined up for the next person. And then I said, well, I might as well reach out to this Patrick Rothfuss guy. He seems popular. Like, I haven't read these people's books. I was like of the older generation of readers. And he said, sure, that sounds okay. And we did it. And at that point, it was like, well, I've got only popular authors. So how about the independents? Because then you start getting into belief systems in communities, which is how do you want to treat people? And for me, authors are authors. It's like you're on your way to being famous or you're famous. And the discovery process of authors is there. And we started testing the waters of what worked for who. And just reached out, Twitter and others just started inviting different people in and discovered the world of how to moderate a community effectively. So you got pacing and belief, which is treat people well. And then the flip side of that, which is how do you set it up so that there's value in that connection? And from there, we've rocketed to almost 90,000 people. We get around 8,500, 9,000 science fiction fantasy fans through each day. And it's been fairly civil.
I think one of the things that you brought up earlier that is key as well, both in that, so there are two things. One is that on the author side of things, you're reaching out and helping people to overcome challenges that they were scared of. Like they were scared to enter into Reddit, and you helped make that easier.
The interesting thing in that discovery process was that authors, most of them, the vast majority, the marketing, how do you get your name out there? How do you work with people has been pushed into their world. There's no budget. There's no budget. So, and the first realization was, really? So these are the people whose books line our shelves and have impacted our lives, are forced to go out and try to figure it out on their own. So that, I can help out. Why don't we do it? And it was, so you start writing that in, and word of mouth starts getting around. But that was the first realization of where the passion comes from, which is the plight of the authors and how little they make and how little power they have out there over the years versus in that environment. And then how do we connect them to fans who, goodness, they loved it too. And so we might as well, let's repeat it. And let's do it in a way that we keep on improving. Can you give me feedback? And then we can do it as a community, reach out to the community for feedback. So it's an interesting space. It's not only the fears to overcome, it's the how-tos, and then there's the trust as well. And that sometimes needs to be overcome.
And it feels like there's a very strong and high level of trust, which is huge. Like within the community, people speak out and they share their opinions, and things shift over time, right? But it's really good, and I think that leads into the other side of things, where I think you reach out to the authors and bridged a gap to help, right? It offers a lot of value. And the other side, which offers value to the fans, but then to the fans and to the community, like to protect that ecosystem beyond policing.
There you go.
Going in and actually investing in people by doing more than just slapping, right?
And the feedback from the community members, some may pipe up once in a while, others have become true leaders in the community, have been, we like this. This is great. This is the only place where I can interact with authors at this type of level.
Absolutely.
I can learn more about the books that I want to read. I can learn more about books I didn't realize I wanted to read. Some authors are so involved that it becomes a big plus for them. It's not just marketing. They're just fans who became authors who have that level of interaction. Others are savvy that it is a marketing instrument for them, and that's okay too. And that's just fine as well. But the key here is I don't make a dime off of this. So might as well spend the time helping in a part of the world where I'm passionate about that has that need, and to connect it to that marketing aspect that they're not getting.
It's the United Way you mentioned.
It's my United Way time. I don't want to. money would just complicate it at this stage. So let's just do it.
Absolutely.
And that formula seems to have worked.
Yeah, and it continues to. And I think that the level of personal investment that you put into it. So, and that goes back to the question, then how do other people carve out a space that's healthy and sustainable and as magnetic as what you've made?
So the key...
Because they're rare.
The key, it is rare, isn't it? And it's sustainable because the policing is common.
Yeah.
So how do I set up algorithms for policing? How do I hit the band hammer on certain people? How do I, it's okay if that's the type of system and process you want to do. The reality is a combination of passion. You want to do this, and the other is that need. Are you meeting a need that is significant? And then building a community is a need. It's a need for people to rally around something they enjoy.
Absolutely.
And then the third one is the ability to set limits. What are the limits? How do we want to set things up in our community so people fall within, don't go into outlier behavior.
Yep.
And in our case, there's only two real rules. One is speculative fiction. So if you go sci-fi, that's okay. Even though it's our fantasy, we just expanded it because it's there. And in general, that's a very broad view. The other one is please be kind.
Yes.
And there's a link to an XKCD that basically says about your rights. And if your rights are not being, I forget the exact quote, but it's essentially your rights are not being violated if you're being an asshole in the community. It's just you're just not matching up the community and they're just asking you to leave. And it's pretty funny because we'll point people towards that occasionally, and they'll click on it and they'll come back and say, I get it. I'm my snappy behavior that I do over in the Reddit sports area is not the same thing here, but I want to participate. And it's funny. They'll do it. And the other side is the community itself. When people join in, they want to get their sea legs. They want to see, how am I supposed to behave in this environment? And they look and see how other people are behaving and commenting. And then they learn quickly. there's no barriers. It's just how people treat each other here. And it's very nice.
But then how do you replicate that if you were to go and you were to start another community tomorrow, or somebody were to come up to you and say, I want to do what you've done.
Right.
What are the steps that you would actually give?
So the challenge, this is an interesting one. Part of the challenge is money. So if somebody wants to collect money in that type of behavior, or you're doing it on behalf of a corporation, so Time Warner, we're going to just pick one, and you're going to go ahead and create a community. Well, now you've just created a wall around it that if it doesn't have economic interest for Time Warner, and there's always that suspicion of what are you representing to me as a community leader? Is it something where you're trying to make money or monetize within there? Within Reddit, it was easier to do just because there was never that component to it, and which meant it's open. It's wide open. You can do whatever you want with it in that area, and that's a big plus. So then one of the challenges is try to remove that stigma. I think Tor.com is doing a pretty decent job of that. Even though they have that name Tor on there, they're still more open than others would expect. But because it's Tor.com, that was other publishers are not going to be as interactive with other authors. So that's part of the challenge, and the other side of it is the setting the goals and the leadership structure of what you're trying to create. And that's a combination of, if you are the content, we saw some of that this afternoon with some of the people that do reviews online and things like that themselves through video, and that's the charisma aspect of it. Are you good enough to be able to have people love you or hate you or whatever you're trying to achieve? That's not me. So for me, it's more like if I can create that connection between fans and create that value, then others will come, and word of mouth will build out, and then you have a trajectory based off of that. And when it's online, that word of mouth is fast. If you're doing a good job, and if you're not doing a good job, it's very, very quickly. And then there's the competency of just being able to moderate the site. Is this good behavior and attract people that can help you out in the process. The people that help out most in our process are authors. And they work behind the scenes a lot of time. They bring in ideas and concepts that help people understand what's happening within the industry. They help bring in conversations and stimulate those conversations. And on the flip side, people enjoy those conversations and the works that I want to check out your works. And it's a very interesting dynamic of collaboration within there. So a lot of this seems, I'm describing what it is, but to be able to build it, and then creating that type of vision, or creating something that can develop into that. So for me, the interaction between community members and authors and industry people, when I can get them in there, should be able to create that type of conversation, and then I can steer the community towards something.
Yeah, and I think you sell yourself a little bit short in that maybe you don't have the video star charisma, but you have a certain set of skills and gifts that lend you towards this type of a community, building it, and maybe that's something that's not as easily replicatable as well.
That's probably true. The business side of things and the ability to just be a good, decent human being kind of helps. Yeah. So those two, and on the author side of things, the business is not a strong suit for most of them.
Yeah.
So to be able to help offset that, I'm not going to write, but what I can do is I can help. My passion is around those connections.
Yeah.
And if I can help facilitate those, and happy fans, happy authors, well, not happiness, satisfied. You don't need rain for happiness.
Authors are never happy.
No,
they don't write well when they're happy.
If they're satisfied with everything that's happening, then that's good. We can do it. And then the passion of representing the rights and the ability, and how can we help those whose books line our shelves do better.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so one final question then to wrap up. What do you want to see? I think we've done a good job of kind of describing like the health of an online community. With yours, like growth is a big part of a healthy organization or a healthy organism.
This is a good conversation.
What for you? What is it that you want to see next? How do you want things to grow?
So
you talk about like authors bringing in things like kind of to help with that, but like what are the things you want to see?
The key here is sustainability. So do I need to be there? In order to sustain it? And from an ego standpoint, that'd be great. But really,
all
helping to find leadership and support. And we have some names in the community, that our moderator team, especially, there's certain members that have just stepped up and done their best, which is excellent to be able to pull some things together. So, for example, Melissa's work at World Company, and that's the type of sustainability, the ability to bring in people that can actually step up and carry on and expand, and that is, I know that's uncommon as well. So it's not about me; it's more about I enjoy it.
I like to hear that.
But that sustainability matters.
But that's incredibly true in any community, because like as humans we die. Spoiler alert. And I think that or you just move on or lose interest, or tomorrow you may decide that you would really like to put that time and energy into something else.
Or I may not have time because of family issues or whatever it is.
And something may fall apart. So to build out those people who will inherit it. That is a sign of health.
It's less building them out. It's finding them, encouraging in them, and then letting them do it in their own vision, and working as a team, and that's what matters.
Do you foresee yourself struggling with founder syndrome when it comes time to hand it over?
So I think, like any good empire, Reddit will crumble. Yes, and they haven't done it to date, but it could be tomorrow, and it'll go quickly, like any other internet empire, and to create a space like this, the questions will be what happens next. And I'd love to have a plan around it. I don't have a plan around it.
Sure.
But I get the feeling that a lot of people would rally around something within that environment. So we'll see. In the meanwhile, this is the tool, it may be a piccolo or whatever it may be. It may not be, it's not a violin as an instrument, because Reddit has limitations, but at the same time, the ability to play it well is the way we're playing this one out. And it's an interesting tool. It's almost an experiment, because there's no financial investment in it. To be able to, or within it, to be able to experiment how to do it right. And I'd love to see that replicated as well. If and when the empire crumbles, where is it going to go? Where do we take this next? And it'd be fun to know.
I'm very excited to see where. I think that'll be the interesting thing is when the pressure's on. I think something good is going to come out of it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think and that's part of the making these connections. But it's not a goal. We're going to keep it the way it is, where it is, and because of the value that it provides. This is maybe it's a flawed tool, but we're using it well. It's creating a segment in that connection between those that create and those that buy, and a decent one, I'd like to think.
Well, we were talking about that even last night. There's that it's gauche if for authors to interact with almost with their fans, online especially. And I think that I was trying to convince another author that I met here, I can't remember who it was, that our fantasy is actually a safe place, and it's encouraged as a community for authors to show up, interact, have conversations, even get into a little bit of a disagreement maybe, and they can exit that unscathed.
I have had to reach out to so few authors because they come in, they get recommendations, they'll be their agent sends in this direction, saying why don't you go talk and get involved and do things like that. it helps. But there are those authors that need to be reached out to because they're not in the circle of people that they're just marginalized.
Absolutely,
for whatever reason. But that word of mouth, it's very sustainable as long as it can maintain that quality.
Yeah, and I think you have that going for it.
Yeah, good.
Cool. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it, and I'll see you again the next time we decide to do some random podcast in the future.
Thanks, man.